It began with a smell so thick, so rotten, so unnatural that the neighbours of a modest house in Darya Khan Bhakkar could no longer ignore it. For days the odour had drifted through narrow alleys, clinging to doorways, sinking into clothes, settling inside the lungs like a living thing. At first, people assumed it was a dead animal, a dog, a goat, something left to rot in the heat. But the smell grew stronger, too strong, too human. Late one evening, a neighbour leaning out from his rooftop noticed flies gathering near a window of the brothers' home. Not a handful, but a swarm, thick, black, buzzing like a small engine, as if something inside that house was calling to them. He called others. They whispered. Some crossed themselves. Some refused to go near the door at all. Finally, someone called the police. When officers arrived, they knocked. No answer. They pushed the door, unlocked. Inside, the air moved slowly, like it was heavy with secrets. When the officers stepped in, they froze. In the dimness of that house, beside a rusted pot, wrapped in stained cloth, lay something that had no place in a home. A human head. The head of a child. Jaw slack, eyes partially open, skin waxy and pale like abandoned clay. It took minutes for the officers to understand what they were looking at. It took years for Pakistan to understand who the brothers were. The house belonged to two men, Farman Ali and his brother Arif. To the outside world, they were poor, quiet, and strange. To those who lived near them, they were something worse, men who had already eaten the dead once before. 3 years earlier, they were arrested for digging up graves and consuming corpses. Not one, not two, dozens. Some reports whispered over 100, others said even more. When police raided their home years earlier, they found bones, scraps of flesh, and a cooking pot filled with human remains. Farman confessed calmly, almost proudly, that he and his brother had developed a taste for the dead. He said the dead were peaceful. They didn't scream. They didn't fight. They were simply there, waiting beneath the soil. Their first arrest shook Pakistan, but after only a short sentence, because there was no law specifically against cannibalism, they returned quietly to their village. People avoided them. Children were told never to pass their house. Women hurried past with lowered eyes. Even stray dogs refused to linger near the door. But no one imagined the brothers would return to the graves. No one imagined they would dig again. No one imagined they would continue their hunger until the smell returned. Farman's obsession began quietly, like a sickness growing behind the eyes. He said he couldn't sleep at night. He felt called by the graveyard. The soil, he said, spoke to him. Arif resisted at first, or so he claimed later. But hunger, dark, twisted hunger, can infect more than one soul. On the first night they returned to the graveyard, the moon hung low and swollen, bathing the earth in a pale metallic light. The brothers walked without speaking, carrying rusted tools and a sack. The cemetery was silent, not the peaceful quiet of rest, but the heavy quiet of expectation. They stopped at the grave of a freshly buried woman, soil still loose, roses still damp, tears of the family not yet dry. Farman stepped onto the mound and began to dig. The sound of the shovel striking the coffin echoed through the night like a scream swallowed by the earth. Arif kept watch, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting the dead themselves to rise in anger. When they lifted the body out, it sagged in their arms, soft, warm from the day's heat. A smell seeped from it, sickly sweet, thick like spoiled fruit. Most men would have vomited. Farman inhaled and smiled. It was the first time in years, but it would not be the last. Back in their home, the brothers had developed a routine. They always chose the same room, a narrow, windowless space, lit only by a single cracked bulb. Inside, the air was humid, the walls stained, the floor covered with old newspapers and rags. They would lay the body on a makeshift wooden plank. Farman would kneel beside it, whispering prayers he himself had twisted, words no longer belonging to any faith. They prepared their meals like butchers who had forgotten humanity. They cut slowly, methodically, pieces placed in bowls, boiled, fried, sometimes eaten raw. Farman claimed the meat gave him clarity. Arif said he tasted nothing, but ate anyway. The neighbors heard strange sounds at night. Soft thuds, scraping metal, muffled whispers. But fear kept them silent. One evening, a neighbor swore he saw Arif throw something into the garbage that looked disturbingly like a bone. Another said he saw smoke rising from the brothers' chimney, long past midnight. A third said he heard laughter, but not the laughter of sane men. In Darya Khan, whispers travel faster than truth. People avoided the brothers' house not just because of rumor, but because of instinct. Children walking to school took longer routes to avoid their street. Women crossed to the opposite side of the lane. Old men said they felt a darkness near the house, a pressure on the chest, a chill on the skin. Animals reacted worst. Stray dogs barked but would not approach. Cats hissed and vanished. Even crows avoided the rooftop. People swore the brothers never slept, that lights flickered at odd hours, that sometimes, at sunrise, the door stood slightly open, as if someone had been out all night. One night, a neighbor heard soft, dragging sounds, like heavy cloth pulled across a floor. Another heard glass breaking, followed by a muffled giggle. Rumor became terror. Terror became silence. Silence became complicity. Nobody wanted to confront them. Nobody wanted to check the house. Nobody wanted to know the truth, until the smell made ignorance impossible. When police entered the house in 2014, they expected filth, chaos, poverty. They did not expect a decaying human head, wrapped in cloth, placed beside a pot, as if it had been waiting, as if it had been chosen. The officer who found it staggered back, hand over mouth. Another crossed himself. A third refused to step further into the room. The stench was unbearable, a mixture of rot, old blood, damp walls, and something darker, something that clung to the soul. When the brothers arrived at the station, they showed no remorse, no fear, no confusion. Farman simply said, there was nothing else to eat. Arif remained silent, eyes fixed on the wall, blinking slowly as if half asleep. Psychologists later described them as detached from reality, highly disturbed, possibly psychopathic. But none of these words captured what they truly were. They were men who had eaten the dead. and they were ready to do it again. Pakistan had no law against cannibalism. None. How do you punish men who eat the dead? What section of the penal code covers such hunger? The brothers were charged instead with grave desecration, terrorizing the village, possession of human remains. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse, some in anger, some in disgust, some simply to see the faces of the men who had eaten corpses like ordinary food. During hearings, Farman often smiled, a thin, distant smile, as if amused by the chaos around him. Arif remained withdrawn, eyes lowered, trembling occasionally. Journalists asked, "Why did you do it? What drove you to this?" Farman answered once, "The dead don't suffer." His words chilled the courtroom. Finally, the court sentenced the brothers to 12 years in prison, not for what they ate, but for what they dug. Experts tried to explain the brothers. They failed. Were they mentally ill, possessed, addicted, traumatized, depraved? Whatever they were, they shared a hunger that defied sanity. Farman said he began after losing his job. Arif said Farman forced him. Neighbors said they both were not normal from childhood. But there were deeper clues. The isolation, the refusal to socialize, the dark rituals at night, the strange laughter behind closed doors, the fascination with graves, the belief that corpses were meant for them. Psychologists described Farman as dominant, controlling, charismatic in a twisted way. Arif was submissive, mentally weak, easily led. Together, they formed something monstrous, a fusion of obsession and obedience, a predator and his shadow, a hunger and its echo. Even after the trial, the village of Darya Khan never healed. The graveyard became a place of fear. Families visited graves only in daylight. Many graves had been tampered with, soil disturbed, stones shifted, planks broken. Parents warned their children, "Don't go near the graves. Don't walk alone at night." Some claimed to hear whispers near the cemetery. Others said they saw shapes moving between graves. Superstitions grew like weeds. The brothers' house was eventually abandoned, windows broken, door hanging loose. Inside, the walls stained with memories no one wanted to remember. Yet, some nights, neighbors swore they heard footsteps inside, soft, slow, dragging, as if the house itself had learned to mimic the men who once lived there. Today, the brothers are locked away, but their story escaped the prison walls. It seeped into the soil, the streets, the night winds of Bhakkar. People still speak of them in hushed tones, not as men, but as warnings. Warnings of what hunger can do. Warnings of what darkness looks like when it wears the face of a human. Some believe the brothers will never stop hungering the dream of graves, that their minds wander back to the cemetery at midnight, digging, lifting, eating. Others believe the earth itself remembers them, that the graveyard changed after their footsteps walked across it, that something woke beneath the soil. But one thing is certain. Pakistan had seen murderers, kidnappers and monsters before, but it had never seen men who ate the dead and felt no shame. This is their story. Unfiltered, uncensored, untouched by mercy. And if you ever pass the graveyard of Darya Khan on a quiet night, just listen. Some say you can still hear a shovel and someone whispering, The dead don't suffer.